What's good, Greatness Gang? Welcome back to another reaction. And today I have a pretty controversial reaction from Mr. Agent Zero, Mr. No Chill Gil, Mr. Gilbert Arenas, the legend himself. He's discussing why the current NBA era and like a few years prior is much tougher and much better than the 80s era. This clip is supposed to be pretty controversial because he's basically calling the guys from the 80s soft and saying that they wouldn't survive in today's game. So I saw a little bit of the clip. I'm gonna watch the full clips with you all because I'm pretty surprised to hear Gilbert speaking like this about legends. Usually when you hear players that came in through his era and people like Kobe and guys like that, in certain clips I've heard, they spoke highly of the legends from the 80s. So I'm pretty surprised that he's talking this way. So let's see what he's fully talking about. Maybe he says something different towards the end. So let's check it out because I'm on my 80s journey currently. If you haven't saw my Larry Bird videos yet, make sure you go on my channel and watch all my Larry Bird videos. Let me know who to watch next. Let's get it.
So the internet's been ablaze, after your controversial opinions on the growth of the NBA. Now you said, and I quote, 80s cannot compete with 90s, 2000s, and now. It is a pointless argument. Bill Laimbeer, I don't know why he caught the slander, but I do get it because it was February. Bill Laimbeer cannot play basketball today. His defense does not work today. So a lot of people...
Bill Laimbeer is the from the Pistons, right?
Got in their feelings, took it personal. I don't think none more than Chris Broussard and Rob Parker. Two gentlemen I respect, hosted the Odd Couple pod on Fox Sports. And they were in their feelings. Did you hear what they said, Gil?
Yeah, I heard it.
Oh, you did? Mm-hmm. You heard all of it?
Yeah, I got it translated for me.
Some transcriptions and all that good stuff.
Translated for me a little bit.
So what's your response to them saying that you don't understand basketball? Understand the game, I believe is what they said.
You know what's so funny? That's the same complaint we have about them, that they don't understand the game because they've never played it. Well, my knowledge for the game, I was actually being nice, right, by calling them drunks. I was being nice, but if we want to see my knowledge of the game, when it merged in, 76, the NBA had a really big problem with the booger sugar from the NBA, right? I was trying to spare, but, since we want to talk about it, 70s, 80s basketball.
You see Brandon Jennings to the side. He looking like, oh God, what is he about to say? And Gilbert Arenas was always one of my favorite players, by the way. I'm from Washington, D.C., so his time with the Wizards was a very exciting time for our city. Very amazing shooter, one of the most underrated guards to ever play.
The league was having a really bad image problem with the Tony Montana. That's what inspired the movie Scarface, because all the NBA players are just coked out. Like, I don't even know why we even playing this game. The whole 70s and 80s NBA league was just on
drugs.
They were just on drugs. Like, it was
performing though. I would say they were performing.
They should have. They was on that hard rock candy.
That cocaine
up
bear.
and down. Like, I don't understand what we're talking about here. Because whenever they make an argument or try to make a point, they use the same six players. The same six players to make arguments. Okay, we're gonna take those six, we're gonna move them. How about the other fucking 450 players that played in the 80s? You know the Knicks teams where they were throwing games for that drug. The Phillies teams where they were throwing games for the drug. That's the type of league that it was. They were literally throwing games for drug habits. Wow. And you're telling me that's the era that's supposed to be this golden shit? It's only golden because it was the merge. Then you had Magic and Bird being the face of the league at that point in time. And race wars going on. You had every black person Spanish person on the West Coast rooting for Magic Johnson and the Lakers, because there was only fucking 2 TV channels. Either you're gonna watch the Lakers or you're gonna watch Boston. And then you had everybody over in Boston rooting for the Legends.
So what do you say, because we're gonna get into a little bit. Normally we don't like to feed the trolls, but you know, we were touched by it. We talked about it yesterday during our pre-production meeting. So MJ and Akeem are a part of the 80s generation.
Cap.
Cap Rooney? Cap? What kind of cap?
Okay, see, this is, so I can break.
Is MJ considered both 80s and 90s or just 90s? What's your opinion on that? I consider him 90s, but you all know more than me, so let me know.
Break it down. It's Chris, right?
Chris Broussard.
Which one called me Willis?
That was Rob Parker, I believe.
He's stuck in the 80s, as you can see. We just call him Willis. Yeah, that fucking show was like mid-80s. Yeah.
Different strokes,
but
though.
you said, I know, but mid-80s, right? He's fucking stuck out there. So this is how it works. All right, so we'll use the 80s. So 1980 to 1984, those are your decade players, right? You don't want to be drafted in 85 or 84, 85 or 85, 86, right? Those were called tweeners. That's your tweener years. Anybody after that, you might as well look to the new decade, because the fact that 77, 78, 79 players, they go through your first 3 years. So basically in the NBA, it's going to take you about 3 years before you can actually get into your groove, right? So those 70, late 70 players, they're going to be priming soon as the decade starts in the 80s. So they have 10 years of work they're going to do. You know, anybody 85, which is going to be Jordan, Hakeem, and Barkley, you have to come out the gates running, man. So even the great Jordan, he still don't make the first team decade averaging 36 and all that, because he still only played 5 years. Yeah. So he has 5 years worth of stats versus someone who played that decade for 10 years. So when you do the decade count, Jordan ranked 8th, Hakeem ranked 10th, Barkley didn't even rank in the top 10 because of that, because he started off the first 2 years. So those players after 84 going on, they're not going to be all decade players. So they will be priming in the following year. That's why Jordan is considered a 90s player.
Well, Jordan did win 4 of his 5 MVPs in the 90s. He did win 1 in the 80s.
He was a 90s player.
6 finals MVPs came in the 90s.
90s player.
His only defensive player of the year, though, came in the 80s.
The only two people I've ever heard called him an 80s player was Chris and, what was his name?
Rob Parker.
Call me Willis. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the only two people I've ever really heard him call Michael Jordan an 80s player.
So I guess the question, if you're saying the game has evolved, 80s can compete with 90s, 2000s, is 80s Jordan better than 90s Jordan?
Really? See, that's
got to ask, Gilbert.
But that's what you do. Can the 80s Jordan beat the 90s Jordan? No. Can the 80s Hakeem beat the 90s Hakeem? No. So what they try to do is then say, Hakeem Olajuwon was whooping on Shaquille O'Neal. You mean Hakeem, the MVP the year before, beating on a third-year Shaq? That's just like Jokic, Embiid, Greek the Freak beating on Wiseman. Obviously. Yeah. That is fucking obviously. Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? It's the arguments you're making don't even make sense. Like, those guys are considered 90s players. Even in the 90s, Shaq was 92, and he's third team. He's third team all decade in the 90s. He's first team in the 2000s. You know what I mean? So it's basically your following year where you come in. But again, you know, you move those 6 players out. Tell us about the rest of those cocaine ass heads. So, you know what I mean? Let's not forget let's not forget what the 80s basketball was really about. Yeah. Like, let's really not like sugarcoat. I shouldn't have said sugar. I shouldn't have said sugar because they.
Speaking of like Magic, do you all check out? I think it's on HBO Max, the Lakers show. I don't remember the name, but I know it recently came out. Is it any good? Should I check it out?
It was all on that. You know what I mean?
Again, when you're talking about this knowledge, what are you basing this off of? Research, or did you actually?
I played.
Do you play basketball?
I played.
Were you all NBA level player, Gil?
I was 3-time all NBA.
You did that 3 times.
So, you know, when we're sitting, gotta remember, I'm 92. You know what? I got my cell phone.
What, 01, 02?
I was 2001. So I'm at the prime, I'm at the beginning of the era. Now, so, you know, if nobody knows this, I'm gonna give you a list of the top 24 players in the 2000 decade.
Okay.
Right? The best 2000. Listen to these names. Let me know if you hear any name that came in 2004, 2005. LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, Dirk, Dwayne, Steve Nash, Allen Iverson, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Ray Allen, Chris Webber, Paul Pierce, Chauncey Billups, Yao Ming, Baron Davis, Carmelo, Tony Parker, Paul Gasol. That's my era. It's hard for, you know, certain players. So the youngest players, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. Yeah, you know, they came in 2002, 2003. You know what I mean? So it's hard for anybody after that to make the team because you're losing to the mid 90s players that's priming right now. So that's what
I get what he's saying now.
That's what the criticism. What's his name again?
Rob Parker.
Rob Parker. You know, like guys, like people like him who just watch games, they don't really understand it. So people that are like players that are in their tweening years, you can just be stuck. You can have a great career and not make your decade team because you came in at the wrong era. So that's why Jordan is not considered an 80s player. He's considered a 90s player because when he came into the 90s, him, Barkley, and those are the same people he used the tweening player. He was better off just saying Magic Johnson and Bird. But you know, that was it. That was the whole era, Magic Johnson and Bird. If you do the this is how you can tell. Shooting guards, right? Since we're not using Michael Jordan in the 80s as a shooting guard, but you can if you want to. We'll go with, you know, you got Clyde, you got Gervin, you know, over here, right? They're in their own those superstars. Now, was it Gus Johnson?
How good was George Gervin? Because I don't hear too many people talk about him.
Who was a guy on the Knicks who was high all the time?
Who was it though?
Ray, something Ray.
Oh, Sugar Ray. Oh,
no, not Sugar Ray. It's Sugar. I mean, anytime you say Sugar, I'm pretty sure they lighten up right now. Michael Ray Richardson. And then you had
had to go overseas. Hooper.
I always want to say Theo Ratliff, but it's Reggie Theus.
No Reggie Theus slander on the show.
No Reggie Theus.
Hang time.
No.
Hang
okay,
time,
so those are the top 4 shooting guards. The last 3 couldn't shoot for shit, right? They couldn't shoot to fucking save their life. Now we put them in the 2000s, right? You got Kobe, Dwayne Wade, Allen Iverson. Who the fuck is those? Who are they guarding? And then we come off the bench, we got Ray Allen, T-Mac, and Vince. What are we talking about here? They should drug test. Someone need to drug test Chris, and what's his name again?
Rob Parker.
Rob Parker. They should be drug tested right now. I'm serious. This is embarrassing.
And the last thing I'll leave with, I think they try to say that you don't know basketball. And I'm looking at a man who dropped 60 points on Kobe Bryant, not knowing basketball. If you knew basketball, you might have dropped 120 on him, Gil.
I swear to God, listen.
180.
This is how great my basketball knowledge is.
I remember that. That was pretty legendary. Dropping 60 on Kobe is crazy.
Bill and Beer, right? I said he wouldn't play in today's game. I really meant that shit, cause he wouldn't. Like I'm sorry, but you know he was drafted with Magic, right? He was drafted in the same draft class. You wouldn't know him because back then they had fucking 7 drafts. They had 7 rounds. 170 to 250 people were being drafted in the 70s and the 80s. Now, I want you to do math and tell me which league, which time is easier to make the NBA. 90s moving forward, 54 spots. 80s, 170 to 250. It looks like they were just doing David Stern was like, hey, you want to play? Huh? You want to play? Huh? You want to play? Huh? You want to play? Come on. He was just fucking picking anyone who touched the basketball at any point in life was on inside the draft. Like there was a bum where I lived. And he was rambling and said, I got drafted. He was like, I got drafted in the 6th round back in 1985. Get the fuck out of here. No, he was right. He was just drafting anybody. So when I say Bill and Beard wouldn't make today's NBA, listen, he was drafted in the 3rd round. 3rd round. If he was 10 years older, he wouldn't have been in the league, okay? He wouldn't have been in this league, right? Like, we know what our 2nd round looks like, right? 30 players in the 2nd round, 20-some players in the 2nd round, 4 to 10 might play 2 years and above. The 80s had 5 more rounds of bullshit.
That's crazy.
Right?
I never knew that.
No, they had 5 more rounds. It's fucking 200 people coming in. As they should.
Anybody can make it.
Anybody, that's what I said, anybody can make it. But this is supposed to be the toughest era. It should be like you should have had 1 round and it's all super. You had 7 rounds of people. Like post office guy, anyone who looked like a basketball player. They said, so look, I want to do this. Bron, I'm sorry, my guy. I have to do it. Jordan is back to GOAT.
Yo, not on the last day of Black History Month.
I'm sorry, Jordan is back to GOAT. I mean,
He's
come
back to
on.
GOAT.
Like he's back to you. Listen, this is why. You got to be the GOAT if you ran the cocaine out of the 80s. Like you literally ran the cocaine out these players. Like you was running circles around them that in the 90s they had to clean their shit up. That like he was a clinic by himself. So I have to give it to Michael Jordan. He's back to GOAT for what he did for the 80s. He was whooping their ass so bad in the 80s. Look, you remember the Last Dance?
I do remember.
When he said the teammates, they was all in there doing drugs.
Yeah,
y'all remember that, right?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
The Last Dance is the Jordan documentary, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you interview any of those players, they won't even remember playing with MJ. That's how high they was.
They don't even remember the young star.
They was on that Antarctica.
What's up, everybody? As you know, Gil's Arena is presented by
Was that it? Yeah, that was it. Yeah, some pretty spicy commentary from Gilbert Arenas. I know he was saying some of it to be comical and rattle some feathers and for entertainment purposes, but I can tell he was serious about some of it too, but he backed it up with data. Another thing, he was also a great player, so it's not just like he was a mediocre player just talking and he shouldn't have been, but he never got a trophy. But unfortunately, how do you feel about it? Do you feel as though the 80s players were tougher than the 90s players, or could they be able to play today's game? I know some people complain about today's game or say that today's game has worse rules, like the refs aren't as lenient as they were back in the day. Like people complain about like LeBron's privileges and the way he always complaining and stuff like that. It's a lot. Let me know how you feel. What's your favorite era? How do you feel about Gilbert Arenas? Check out my Larry Bird reactions. Subscribe to the channel. Love you guys.